Well, good evening. My name is Daphne Romani. I am an architect with Brio Architecture, and I'm just now going in business for myself, and I want to focus my practice on healthy environments, and that's what brought about this presentation. I gathered some other professionals that focus their practices on healthy environments, and so that's what we wanted to share. Let's see. Okay. So we are going to go over what environments are and why they're so important to our well-being and how these environments affect us. What can we do about improving our well-being through improving our environments? And that means minimizing exposure to toxins and as well as detoxification, because anything that we remove from our environment as well as our physiology can be considered detoxification as well. So the Merriam-Webster definition of environments is circumstances, objects, and conditions by which one is surrounded. And this is my attempt at identifying how all of the aspects of circumstances and spaces that surround us. So today we're going to be focusing on spaces, but spaces really can significantly impact our inner biology as well as thoughts and emotions. And those are inner environments. And spaces and actions and relationships can kind of fall under an outer category of environments. And you know, anything that we put into our environments, so any actions, any relationships, any thoughts, emotions, and especially foods and other products that we put on our skins, everything affects our physiology and everything else. And so what we're basically doing here is we're starting from spaces, but I'm sure many of you may have started maybe a decade ago thinking about, oh, I should get some good food. And then all of a sudden there's all these other aspects that, oh, maybe I should focus on beauty products and skin products as well. So this is just an overview of my way of organizing my ideas and thoughts around environments, what constitute environments and how we can affect them. So right now, it's becoming more and more prevalent, and what does it look like when our environments are out of sync? And even major outlets like you know, Johns Hopkins and WebMD, these are just lists of symptoms that we may be experiencing if we are affected by a multiple chemical sensitivity. You know, how many people may suffer from headaches, rashes, muscle and joint aches, and may never connect it to being sensitive to some chemicals in our environments. So it's more and more prevalent within our environments that we run into these kind of elements. So nature nurtures us, but when we are in buildings, we're obviously separated for reasons, you know, we're sheltered. And in building biology, which the next presenter, Kathy, is a building biologist, in building biology, they define buildings as our third skins. So the first skin is our skin, and it's protective and it's very absorptive, and it's a filter. So it filters things from the inside, from the outside to the inside. And our clothing is a second skin. So when we're inside structures, now that can be considered a third skin. And as buildings separate us from nature, they enclose and sections us off from light, water, air. And in a way, we can consider that as being, those elements are still present, but they're filtered. And so we are, in a way, the quality of our filter, so the quality of our buildings will really define the quality of the light, water, and air that we experience when we're inside structures. So when it comes to light, it's really important that we have interior spaces very well lit with natural light. And so having large windows or having sun being accessible from the inside is really important. And there is no sanitizer better than sunshine. And that can help, of course, improve our moods and well-being, and having enough sunlight will also help prevent molds and other biologics that might be in the space. When it comes to water, there are two main goals to be achieved by buildings. One is to offer us the cleanest source of potable waters, and oftentimes that we should filter it, because municipalities often add a lot of chemicals to it for purification purposes. And the other one is to keep the water out, because if there are any leaks or any water infiltration, too much moisture, it will create not ideal spaces for human habitation. So when it comes to air, we can break it down into 4 aspects. Biologics, so there can be mold, bacteria, mites, and viruses. Frequencies, which is technically space, but and then there's gases, so VOC and air infiltration, and particulates. So I will touch on biologics, and then I'll pass the word to my team members to discuss frequencies, gases, and particulates, which have to do with indoor air quality and air infiltration inside the building, and particulates, which has to do with mechanical systems and filtrating the air that circulates inside. And this is a really amazing slide to consider that, you know, a lot of times we worry about the quality of the food and the quality of the waters that we ingest. However, we ingest a far greater quantity of air than either food or water. So it's really important that the air that we surround ourselves in or immerse ourselves in is of high quality and free of toxic material and chemicals. So biologics, mold, bacteria, mites, and viruses. So there are a few methods to prevent these from happening, and they go, you know, we can list proper ventilation, sunlight, avoiding stagnating water for water damage from both inside and outside, like water. It could be, you know, a leaky roof, but it could also be a leaky dishwasher or washing machine. So it's really important that we keep a close eye onto our plumbing fixtures, making sure that we don't have any ongoing leaks and that we repair them promptly before any possible damage can happen. And having proper insulation can avoid condensation that happens when warm air moves towards cold air and it meets a surface and it creates moisture. And therefore, there's a high likelihood of condensation, water, and mold growth. Now, Kathy will talk about EMFs and how to protect ourselves from those.
It's Kathy, and I'm a building biologist, like Daphne said. Most of my work these days is mold and mold assessments, air quality, but also I do a lot of EMF work as well. So who's worried about EMF? You guys know what I'm talking about? Okay, electromagnetic fields, for anyone who's not familiar with EMF. So we're talking about your cell phones, your laptops, your Wi-Fi, your cell antennas outside, electric fields in the walls, magnetic fields, all this stuff, this human-made electric environment that our bodies have not evolved with. All right, so it's foreign to us. So I've only got 15 minutes to talk about a very complex topic, so I'm going to go pretty quickly, but hopefully I'll reach the main points with you. Anybody who wants to take a screenshot of this, that's just websites for more information about this topic, mostly the health implications, because a lot of people don't believe there's a health implication to this, but we know that there is. This is the work of Dr. Martin Pall, who has basically recognized one way that EMFs actually impact the body, which is to artificially open voltage gates on our cells, mostly voltage gated calcium. And then the calcium floods into the cell, and we shouldn't have that much calcium inside our cells. It should be mostly on the outside. And when this happens, we get this downstream of oxidative stress. And then what does oxidative stress cause? You name it. Depends on the person, right? We're all bio-individual beings. So the symptoms that we may get are going to be different than somebody else. But here's a list. I would say for my clients, the most common ones are insomnia, headaches, anxiety, irritability, memory, which could be from what? A million things, right? But these are the ones that I see most often. This is actually why I became a building biologist, because I was having very, very severe insomnia. I was getting anxious and irritable, and I was getting ringing only in the ear where I held my phone. And within about 3 days of me eliminating all this, it was like the world changed for me. So then I knew I had to know what was going on here. So just, we're not going to spend too much time on that. I want to get into the nitty gritty about what you can do in your own home and in your environment to really reduce your exposure. Has anyone had an EMF assessment or, or mitigated your fields at all, reduced kind of? Okay, cool. So it's a huge field and people don't like to talk about it because behavior change is hard. And these are unbelievably addictive, more addictive than crack or cocaine or sugar or whatever, because there are more cell phones in the world than there are people. And we depend on them, right? We live our lives on them. So I'm going to hopefully show you some ways where we can step back from that. So as an electromagnetic radiation specialist, I'm going to test for 4 fields, which is the radio frequency from all of our wireless, the electric fields of, the wires in our walls, because right now I'm in an electric field because these electrons are circulating out from these wires about 6 to 8 feet. So my electric field exposure is pretty high right now. It's much lower since I just walked away. Well, actually it's not, because I've got all this in it, but I'll stand right here. But yeah, distance is very, very good for all of these fields. And then we'll talk about magnetic fields, which is current flow. We'll get that from power lines and appliances. And then this thing called dirty electricity, which I'll get more into. Okay, where do radio frequencies come from? I just mentioned a whole bunch. I really like to point out a few things that I have seen. This wrist, this is a 13-year-old girl in one of my classes once who was wearing a fitness tracker, and she promptly stopped doing that because she got a burn on her hand. Diapers, how do you know when your baby needs to have their diaper changed if your phone doesn't tell you the diaper's wet, right? I really, special mention these ones, the tampon, because how do you know when to change your tampon if your phone doesn't tell you it's time? Or the posture devices, which you put, on your back, and I love the idea because you slouch and then your phone tells you sit up straight. But where is that going? Directly through your heart to your phone. And then the little baby monitors, which I do not think is a good idea at all. Okay, what do we do about all this stuff? Because we're living on our devices. You can use a landline. They still exist. I have a hardwired computer and I make all of my calls through Google Voice. So I have a free Google Voice phone number. You can get a WhatsApp phone number, a Skype phone number, and I could sit here and talk on my computer all day because it's wired and I don't have to do this, right? When you're out in the world, it's a different story, but I don't make calls when I'm out in the world. Somebody leaves me a message. I check messages once or twice a day because this is on airplane mode always. And then I will return the messages on my hardwired computer. If there's anything that you do to reduce your exposure, anything, it would be to hardwire your internet. And everyone's freaking out because they're like, well, I got all my neighbors and there's a cell tower over there and blah, blah, blah. But your exposure to your router is the closest thing in your life. And so your exposure from there is going to be much higher than that cell tower over there or your neighbors or anything else. So usually I can drop someone's field by about 90% by just hardwiring their router. And it's not really that complicated. If anybody wants to know more, I got an article on that, and it's not as complicated as you think. What else? Okay, I got to talk about this for a second. So for those of you that have phones, do you have your Wi-Fi and your Bluetooth on in addition to your cell service? Maybe you don't know, which means you probably do. Means, yeah, you probably do. Which means you're getting Bluetooth, you're getting Wi-Fi, you're getting cell service. You're getting 3 different frequencies hitting you constantly all the time. So you want to go in and turn your Bluetooth off, because are any of you wearing wireless earbuds? Please don't. They talk to each other through your brain. I highly discourage it. So you can turn your Bluetooth off because you don't need it. Maybe you're not using Wi-Fi at home. Turn it off. You can reduce your exposure, little bit by little bit. Another awesome tip is my phone's totally off here. I can go in and answer all my emails, answer my texts and everything when it's on airplane mode. And then I can turn it on for 30 seconds. It'll send them all. Boom, they're gone. And then I turn it right back off. So I don't have to sit here and answer emails. I can do all of that and reduce my exposure dramatically. So just a couple tips for you on that one. Okay, the rest of what I'm going to talk about very quickly basically just has to do with the wires in your walls. Because if this were your bedroom, where would your bed be? Pretty much right along these wires, right? So your electric field, when you lay down at night, is high because your head is like right here. So we really like to reduce those fields because it can be very, very disruptive for sleep. And the ways we do that, well, we could move your bed away a foot from the wall. That's helpful. You could put a nice fat headboard here to give yourself a little bit more distance. You can turn your breakers off at night, which is what I do, to my bedroom and the room below me. You can shield, which gets a little bit more complex, but you can put shielding on the wall. You'd have to test that to confirm. You can unplug all the crap that's next to your bed. That's really big. Especially, I see people with power strips and like 3-4 cords going under the bed, right? We can unplug those. You can put it on a little power strip and just hit the power strip. Same thing as unplugging. So just get rid of, just be mindful about all the electrical devices that are near you. And please don't sleep with your phone plugged in to the charger, like right next to your head, like I see so many people doing, because the electric field on that cord is massive, like hundreds of volts per meter, and we want that number under 0.3. So just being mindful about all of that and, keeping your distance is going to be awesome. And then magnetic fields. This is a little bit more complex because you don't know if you have a magnetic field without testing it. But as a general rule, I had a client a couple weeks ago, and the son's room, the refrigerator was on the opposite side of this wall, and his son's bed was right here. Okay, well, very high field from that refrigerator. Anything with a motor that's turning, the furnace, any large appliance, you don't want the bed on the opposite side of the wall, right? Things like little tiny alarm clocks can be very, very high. So just put it on the, put it 2 feet away from you, and that field's going to drop off dramatically. So this is another area where just be mindful of what's around you and make sure, especially where you sleep, sit, and stand, the areas where you spend the most amount of time, that you have distance from this stuff. And, you know, wiring errors and power lines, you just have to test that to know for sure. All right. And then finally, dirty electricity. So dirty electricity is an altered sine wave. This means that, you know, here in the US, we use 60 hertz. The electricity comes into our house. It goes up and down 60 cycles a second. Awesome. But what we do is plug a bunch of stuff into the wall, and we love our LED lights and we love all of our energy saving stuff, which is great, but it creates this noise. See these spikes? That actually looks like a dimmer switch. Anything that changes the power creates this noise. So we've got energy efficient appliances and light bulbs and solar panels. And unfortunately, that stuff causes this dirty electricity. So here's some of the most common sources. Plasma TVs, your computer charger, solar panels, LED light bulbs, fluorescent lights, dimmer switches are huge. So what can we do about that? I used to say get incandescent light bulbs, but those are illegal now. You can't get them anymore. So you can get modified halogen light bulbs. And thankfully, the LEDs are getting better. So I don't have a list yet because they kind of change a lot, but they seem to be getting better. And one of the things I tell people to do all the time, which nobody wants to hear, is you don't have to have every light on in your house all the time, right? So I go to my parents' house, it's like, good God, you know, it's 8 and it feels like it's noon. It's like, why do we have every light bulb in the house on? So we can be mindful about our use there. And I am really excited about a new light bulb that just came out, which I did not get a chance to put on here, but it's for like a can light. And all you do is flip the switch and it goes from daylight to dusk to darker. It's got 3 levels of light. So for that circadian rhythm, it's awesome because it goes to like this really dark amber at night. So you can still have a light bulb on and you're not getting that full spectrum. You're blocking that blue light. So much better for your circadian rhythm.
But it's not a dim.
It's not. It doesn't.
Because
It's
you hate dim.
correct. Correct. John knows I hate dimmers. It's not a dimmer, and it has been tested very clean from dirty electricity. So I can get the name of that. I'll have to look it up. I've got a link to it somewhere, but it's super cool. I'm really excited about it. Otherwise, like, do you have dirty electricity? You don't really know. You have to have it tested, but I'm going to give you a really quick tip on how, if you wanted to test it in your house without like a fancy oscilloscope like this or whatever. You can get a little handheld AM radio, costs like 25 bucks. You tune it down to 520. You listen for normal static, and then you walk around and put it near stuff and you'll hear it go bonkers. So like, if I had it right here, the electricity would be just crazy. So you can use that around your house to identify sources and then adjust accordingly. It's awesome. It's a really good tool to use. All right. I don't know where I'm at time, but I'm probably getting close. So finally, if you had a really severe situation, you lived, you know, really close to a cell tower or something where your radio frequency was quite high, there are shielding options. You just got to be really careful with this because it can backfire. You know, you want to consult with a building biologist or somebody who knows how to shield, but there are things you can do. Canopy, sleeping in a canopy like this is nice. There's other things. Quick note about chips, pendants, harmonizers. I'm not the biggest fan of them because from a physics standpoint, we really haven't been able to verify what they're doing. There's a lot of great sales pitches out there that don't add up to our understanding of physics from a building biology perspective. I'm not saying that they don't work or that you shouldn't use them. Just be aware if you're going to spend your money, you know, we don't really know. If you use it and you get great, you feel better, great, you know, that's awesome. But it does not take place of reducing your exposure, right? And fixing your house. Like, you have to do that. It's like taking a pharmaceutical for the nail in your foot. You got to remove the nail first, right? Okay, and I'll leave you with this, my favorite cartoon of all time. So that was a really quick, brief overview of EMF, but hopefully I gave you some good tips.
Own and operate Earthcraft Construction. We're here, we build energy efficient and healthy homes. That's what we concentrate on. That's our mission. And when you're a builder, you know, you're like me, you're a hammer. You see everything as a nail. What I'd love to do is just build you a new house, but we can't always do that, right? I'd love you to build a house, you know, considering all these things, but we can't always do that. So we're going to talk about, just like the other people here, we're going to talk about what could be going on in your house, things that you can identify, and then what you can do about it. Okay. And I'm going to talk about off-gassing, kind of chemical sensitivity stuff. US population 2018, 25%. That's pretty staggering. You know, it's a good bit of people. Of those 25%, 86.2 experience health problems such as migraine headaches when exposed to, you know, fragrance. That's kind of a little specific one, but when exposed to fragrance consumer products, but everybody has that in their house. Everybody's got something little plugged in somewhere, some little chemical thing that is emitting a carcinogen. Prevalence diagnosis of these multiple chemical sensitivities has increased over 3 times in a little over 10 years. That's kind of pointing to how common these things have kind of become in our daily lives. Everybody has candles, little things that you plug in, among other things. Those are probably some of the most common. But there's lots of things that off-gas. When I think about off-gassing, I think about kind of petroleum products, things that have resins in them, binders, glues, those kinds of things. These are things that we need to watch out for, right? Maybe places that you don't know they're going to be: carpet, vinyl tiles. I'm just going to list this stuff off. Laminate flooring. You guys can see it up here. The third line there, your air fresheners, all-purpose cleaners, detergents. That's a pretty easy one to eliminate. My slides, I kind of go like this. I'm going to tell you a whole bunch of bad stuff, and then I'm going to tell you how to mitigate it. So the slides go really bad. I'll tell you a whole bunch of bad stuff, and then we talk about what to do. But there's a lot of things that are off-gassing inside your house. They're leaching into your air, through your walls, through the ground, through lots of different places. And so this slide's on here because this is a pretty bad one. Spray foam insulation. It's gained a lot of popularity over, the last, probably 15 years, I guess. It is good and bad. It's good for some things, like sealing things up and creating a more energy efficient climate, but it off-gasses terribly, especially this stuff that you see in this picture here that we use really commonly in new construction and in renovation. It's about 1 to 3 years. Some builders have done things like essentially turning up the heat in the house for a series of days and trying to cook out these types of off-gassing materials. Kind of like Kathy with her shielding, you can almost bake things into the house. You can almost cause a worse space than before, but these are some bad things. What can you use in place of spray foam insulation? Even fiberglass bats are better. Other natural materials, you got rock wool nowadays. You even have supernatural materials like straw bale, adobe even type structures, of course, are pretty organic, so once again, we're going bad, then we're going to get good. So hang in there. Flooring, some just places that you don't think. Vinyl, that can be bad, especially the rolled sheets. The type that click together, they're not so bad. But this rolled sheet, old type of linoleum, you see it in a lot of 70s houses. I've pulled miles of it up. That off-gasses quite a bit. I kind of think of it as the softer the material, the worse it is. The harder it is, it's almost like the more stable it is, the harder it is, and the softer it is, the worse it is. These old sheet vinyls, they're pretty soft. Like you can stick your fingernail in them and you'll make a indentation. Those are bad. Okay, so they're present in these things. carpet, your cheaper carpets especially, they make carpets made from like real wool. Of course, those are really awesome. They're really expensive. If you're the kind of person who really wants to have carpet in their house, I would look to that alternative. A material like this is much easier to clean and is going to be indoor air quality, which I'm not going to get into because she's knows way more than I do. But that's kind of getting it, you know, so it's a balance, right? We're not going to fix everything. We're not going to be able to fix everything, but just kind of knowing where it is and how to balance it out. What can we do? Carpet's going to have a little bit of irritants in the air quality, whereas something hard like this may be better for you. These PFAs, you get PFAs in anything that is non-stick, right? Your countertop sealers, any kind of stain guard, you get them in a lot of couches, lots of cloth materials that are made to not stain, to repel water. These are chemicals that are placed on those fabrics or in those solutions to clean things that are made water repellent, and they have these PFAs in them. These PFAs are known to be really, really bad. We want to limit those. You want to check in on your cleaners. Old school people or people who are very much in the chemical sensitivity department are going to say use vinegar. You know, hot water and vinegar is probably about the least toxic thing you could use to clean your house. You can kind of step up from there on petroleum-based products, but they off gas and they're bad for us. There are alternatives. This Rubio Monaco, it's kind of a fuzzy picture, but it's a super good alternative. I'll, you know, leave it up to you guys to look into that, but there are alternatives for these coatings that we want. We need durable coatings inside our house, our trims, our counters and stuff, our cabinetry, our millwork. We want those coatings to be cleanable, washable, and we want to be durable. Rubio Monaco is a good alternative to things that we used to use like oil based paints all the time that are very durable and washable, but they're not, may not be so good for us to live amongst. And fiberboard, particle board, they have lots of resins in them, glues that are made. They're really great. I'm a green builder. I concern myself with sustainability, renewability. What can we do with materials to give them an added life? Fiberboard, particle board, we take all this mixture that we would burn or throw away, mix it with some resin, and we give it another life, make it a whole new board. And that's great. It really is great. But it comes at a cost. Particle boards, fiber boards, MDF, they're way worse than plywood. So if you can use plywood in place, that's way, way, way better. Use a lot less glue in plywood. Plywood's typically your three layers or 5 layers or 7 layers. And then there's glue in between them. So there's like a little bitty strip of glue. With MDF and like particle boards, it's, you know, immersed in glue everywhere. So we're going to choose the one that has less glue. I can't not use plywood. I can't not use some type of sheet good, but I'm going to choose one if I'm a very chemical sensitive person, or if I'm a builder who is working for a very chemical sensitive person, I'm going to choose that. If I was going to renovate my house and I was chemically sensitive and I wanted new cabinetry, new millwork, these are things that I would concern myself with. Air sealing. So if we have materials in our house that are off gassing, I want to not encourage that within my space. If they're off gassing in the wall, then I should leave them off gassing in the wall. I shouldn't bring that contaminant. Once again, to touch on where these places could be present, these dirty areas that could be kind of leaching into our house. Some of the 2 worst places are our attic and our crawl space. This is a crawl space and this is an attic, and we have lots of water mold issues that are creeping in there. Both of these things can be solved, and we're not going to get too far in the weeds. gassing in our house, in the air, and they're in our surfaces that we touch, like our cleaners that we're using. What can we do about it? So now we're kind of getting into the ways that we can do something about it. Some people have odors. So what can we do? There's carbon bags in these things called zeolite. They're non-toxic, 100%, odor, or excuse me, 100% non-toxic, but they're little kind of odor absorbers. Those can be hung around the house. I talked about the bake out earlier. That's a building biologist thing. I would really consult somebody like Kathy before you consider doing something like that, but it is something that has been known to happen. There's issues with it. Most people don't bake their house for long enough, and that's kind of one thing. Other people try to live in it while they're doing it. It's a bad idea. Seal coats, if you would knew that something was in a material in your house and you couldn't change it out, you could potentially seal it in. Kind of like lead-based paint, where we don't chip away at it. We could, but then we have to mitigate that whole thing and the air around it. Or a viable solution for lead-based paint mitigation is encapsulation. And so that's what Safe Coat sort of is. We're going to try to attempt to encapsulate that thing that is off-gassing and keep it away from us. Testing and monitoring. This is interesting. It's kind of like COVID. It's almost like the idea, the strategy of, well, I'm going to test a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to move things in and out of my life, with continual testing, and thereby come up with a good solution as to what's making me sick and what I can do about it. There could be, it could be mold. It could be these PFAs, formaldehydes, off-gassing inside your house. They could be, who knows? Testing is something that's going to help you figure out what it is. They have different methods, and all sorts of little software things and little apps and stuff that can help you. This is just one that I found. It's $300. This particular one that I just happened to find actually comes with some additional little components, but it does a whole wide range of reports indoor air quality inside your home, air pollution from cooking, cleaning, wood burning, interior decoration, smoking, wildfire smoke, which is big for us up here from time to time. And you can even have these little reports that will tell you kind of where you lay on the spectrum. These things are, in my mind, crucial to testing where you're at. You need to find out where you're at right now, mitigation measures, and then test again. Okay, easiest to most difficult. What can we do? The end state is, it's going to take several little small things, and Daphne really touched on this. It's several small things to make a cumulative change. You're not going to solve anything with just one thing. Dilution solution is great for these off-gassing things. Just introduce fresh air, open up a window, open up a door, get some fresh air in. I understand that we can't always do that. Sometimes it's 28 degrees outside or 17 degrees, but when we can, let's introduce fresh air inside the house. Mechanical movement, which Kara's going to touch on. Testing, removal, retesting. I just talked about that. Air sealing, that's on a containment side. An aero barrier is this new age thing where you can positively pressurize your house. You make your house more pressurized in the outside atmosphere. There's an aerosolized caulking, which in and of itself is toxic in a way. But it's all a balance, right? And it's kind of interesting how caulking goes and it seals up everything. And then ventilation in our attic and crawl space. Ventilation is the best thing. It's a dilution solution for your attic and your crawl space to introduce new air and make sure that those places are, that their humidity levels are kept low. We can do that with making more ventilation available, more just openings in our structure, or we can do that with mechanical help. We can force the air in there. Well, and then super quick, obviously the next step is to renovate your house. If you are experienced, you've done these testings, you've talked to building biologists, you've talked to someone like Daphne, and you're still experiencing symptoms, well, you can buy a new house, renovate it, you can renovate your existing house, or you can build a new one. That is my conclusion for my off-gassing presentation. And questions will be held to the end.
I assume you guys are getting some amazing information. Yeah, and this is information that is a lot of us don't know. So I'm just going to talk a little bit from my point of view, because we're looking at cleaning up an environment, and what I want to kind of talk a little bit about what's available here. So it's kind of like a fish in a fishbowl. And these toxins that we're exposed to, they impact how we're able to produce energy. So just like a fish in a fishbowl, if it's dirty water, it's not going to do very well. And it's the same in our body. If our cells have a lot of toxins around them, that mitochondria, how we produce energy, is not going to do very well. So it is, and at the end of the day, the amount of energy we have in our cells, that's going to become, it's kind of like a fish in a fishbowl. And